exploring our mysterious universe. Inspired by the great dreamers and doers of the past, we look to our future with anticipation and hope. To flourish, we must nurture the life-giving spirit that lives within us all. A special gift called imagination. This is the heart and soul of mankind, giving us the ability to dream, to explore, to create a better life.
Most exciting and by far the most important part of our Florida project, in fact, the heart of everything we'll be doing in Disney World will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow. We call it EPCOT, spelled E-P-C-O-T, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow.
The first phase of Walt's greatest dream, EPCOT, was opened in 1971, and guests who came to Walt Disney World expecting a Florida version of Disneyland were in for quite a surprise. Because in addition to the Magic Kingdom, the Walt Disney World plan called for themed resort hotels, the resort community we know as Walt Disney World Village, campgrounds, a world of recreation and relaxation. In other words, a complete vacation kingdom. Walt predicted his Florida project would become something that more people would talk about and come to look at than any other place in the world. That part of Walt's dream has already come true. Each step of the way, Disney designers called Imagineers have been applying the EPCOT concepts. New ideas and new technologies in everything we do on the Walt Disney World property. Advanced new electric-powered trains and linear induction-driven people movers already demonstrate potential new transportation systems. Other Community of Tomorrow technologies include a central energy plant solar project, the world's first use of steel modular construction, a unique network of underground utilidors, computer-controlled fire, safety, and energy systems, the world's first fiber optic telephone system, and the use of water hyacinths for treating of wastewater and creating methane gas.
The EPCOT concept, as Walt enunciated it, was that this would be a place where not only could you apply and demonstrate and test and utilize new systems and new methods and new materials, but it would be and prove them out, but it would be a place where they would be utilized and seen by the public, both the general public and various professionals and experts who would be interested in certain aspects of it, so that it would serve as an example that this would be a place where those kinds of things could be tried out, not within the confines and the limitations of a laboratory, but in a real environment where they were under pressure of use by thousands of people, and they can serve as a demonstration to communities everywhere as to what's possible. And I think they have already had that effect. In 1966, shortly after Walt had announced that we had acquired the land and that we were prepared to go ahead with an unusual concept, namely his concept of EPCOT, we put together a team of scientists and engineers who, in effect, gave us what today would be called an environmental impact statement concerning this land, in which all of its environmental characteristics were carefully charted out and studied. And this was long before there was an Environmental Protection Act, or even before it was even being talked about. But to me, the environmental story, the fact that we accepted the responsibility environmentally for this land at a time when no one was thinking in those terms, was, to me, the first broad application of the EPCOT concept. And of course, the next step that we're taking in the development of EPCOT, the opening of EPCOT Center, which is very close to us now, is simply a further expansion of that same concept.
And today, with the completion of the first phase of EPCOT Center, Walt Disney World is clearly an experimental, prototype community of tomorrow. A vast new showplace for the innovations of the future and the nations of today. This unique community of ideas encompasses two major themes. First, Future World, posing the challenges and previewing the choices for our community of tomorrow in the areas of communication, transportation, energy, the land, and imagination.
Well, I think one of the real challenges we face with Future World is creating a place that not only is terrifically hopeful for the future, but a place that's going to be a lot of fun and very exciting to be a part of. It's a place where a little guy like Figment here would feel right at home. And to do that, I think all of us have faced a challenge of making these technologies and these future choices very invitable and very participatory for the audience that's going to be a part of our Future World project.
Across the lagoon, 9 nations stand side by side in friendship in the World Showcase. A community of nations focusing on the cultures, traditions, and accomplishments of people from around the world.
I think that might have been Walt's expression, a community of nations. And that pretty well, to me, explains what the intent is. The intent of it is a community of nations that if people live together in a neighborhood, they get to know one another better. And they're much more apt to be able to settle problems peacefully and practically if they know what makes each other people tick. And a community of nations is really what it seems like it is to me, a community of nations that can grow until it represents all the nations in the world. And from that standpoint, I think it has a great import to the world.
In these carefully themed environments, the attention to architectural detail, combined with authentic foods, merchandise, costuming, and entertainment, create a vivid feeling of actually dining at a sidewalk cafe in Paris, walking through the splendor of Venice, or enjoying the warmth of an English pub. Many of the World Showcase countries are represented by specially created shows, combining film and other special techniques to bring to life the heritage and history of Canada, Mexico, Japan, and China. And a spectacular presentation combining film, theater, and the unique Disney technique of audio animatronics presents the story of the United States in The American Adventure. In the future, both the World Showcase and Future World will grow to include Equatorial Africa, Israel, Spain, and other countries, as well as adventures into life and health, the living seas, and a look at life in the 25th century called Horizons. Answering a challenge as vast as EPCOT Center has taken years of research, the creativity and skills of hundreds of people, and the synthesis of 1,000 details.
it isn't a very simple process. Your first idea more than likely isn't going to work, and if you're lucky, maybe your sixth or seventh idea is going to work, and you're not dealing in the abstract with a concept. Every discipline in this organization, and that includes the operating input from Walt Disney World or from Disneyland or from Tokyo Disneyland, impacts that idea as you go along.
In the old studio, this is, of course, what we looked forward to as a story session with Walt. There's usually quite a number of people, and ideas were tossed around. And we're kind of like that in a way. Since Walt has gone, we were not as close as we were when we had Walt in one of these meetings. But we do follow a same kind of momentum. We may go a little east and west, but if the direction was north, even though we're going slightly east, we're moving north too.
The show as it's being constructed and produced right now is the result of 6 other failures, including one by myself. And each failure led to the development of another kind of approach toward telling something significant and substantial about America. And the important thing is that we are making theatrical breakthroughs in terms of our method of presentation by taking the largest rear projected screen that's ever been done, combining that with mid-ground dimensional sets, as you saw, and foreground audio animatronics figures to create a complete theatrical environment that actually changes before your eyes. And that's our magic machine for telling the story. In terms of the story itself and what we're trying to tell, I spent many, many hours here working in the evening with Dr. Alan Yarnell, who's professor of history at UCLA.
I would drive out there and we would begin work, and we would spend anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8 hours just working. Everybody would be gone except the night watchman. And we would be working on concepts and seeing if things work. And when we thought we had a mesh, we would simply know it.
Because of the need for accuracy and as much real-world input as possible, we turned to a group of professional consultants from all over the world. These individuals and boards of advisors played a crucial role in assuring that the cultures and peoples of the World Showcase are presented accurately, and that the glimpses of things to come in future world are truly possible.
I think it's important to build something like EPCOT, or for that matter, Disney World or Disneyland, because we attract young people and old people who have made up their minds about the future. So therefore, the kids come in, as we all do at a certain age, looking for their own futures there. We go into libraries for these things, we go to movies for these things, but we go to World's Fairs. And somewhere along the line, we are passed through the experience. I look upon the EPCOT Center itself, at the very center of it, Spaceship Earth, as a kind of Schweitzer centrifuge. Schweitzer was always telling us what? That we should set examples, someone may imitate them, preferably good examples. So if you put the children in this centrifuge of Spaceship Earth and whirl them around, filled with the ideas of the far past, the immediate present, and the far future, they'll come out galvanized and care very much about getting out of bed tomorrow morning. That's what you must do for children. The educational process must do it, teachers must do it, and we must do it. And let's be there ahead of the teachers this time, huh? Let's say to the children, for God's sake, the future is worth building.
Dr. Carl Hodges, a horticultural specialist, explains that modern techniques in the land's living laboratory are prototypes that will produce the food of the future.
There's hundreds of thousands of known plants in the world. Of these, we cultivate about 150, and from 30 of these, we get about 95% of our calories and protein. This one plant, rice, feeds about 1/3 of the people on Earth. Sugarcane is terribly important to us from a caloric standpoint. But we won't only show the things that are important now, we'll show potential for the future. For example, this plant The buffalo gourd has been used by the American Indian for centuries, and yet we essentially do not know it today as a food crop. But it contains 35% protein in the seed, and the root is 50% starch. We'll show how agriculturalists are also taking relatively conventional crops, such as these tomato plants, and growing them in unconventional fashion. By raising the plant up off the ground and growing it in a vertical fashion, yield can be increased by a factor of 10 what it would be if they were simply laying on the ground. They utilize space more efficiently. They're up in the air where they get maximum sunlight.
In addition to these specialists, some of America's most prestigious companies have joined us at Walt Disney World in making EPCOT Center a reality. The Bell System presents Spaceship Earth. Exxon hosts the universe of energy. General Motors in the world of motion. Kodak assists our journey into imagination. Kraft presents the land. And Sperry joins us in the Communicore. And in the World Showcase, many internationally known companies have combined to bring their home nations to EPCOT Center. Once the concepts have been developed, the research completed, and the input of all of the hundreds of people needed has been gathered, the talents of Disney craftsmen and artisans are called upon to bring the ideas to life. Here, some of the world's most unusual storytelling techniques come into play. Advanced digital sound recording, widescreen projection techniques, computer-assisted video, even three-dimensional film, all are combined in EPCOT Center to take these shows beyond the state-of-the-art. One dramatic technique developed by Disney is the Circle Vision 360 projection system, seen here on location in Canada and China. Off the screen, the effects run the gamut from the very real to the almost unbelievable.
Hi, come on into the Special Effects Lab. This is where all the magic and all the creative things that you see happening with special effects happens. We create it here, we design it, prototype it, have a lot of fun doing it. We create everything from a little puff of smoke to lightning in jars to what you just saw, a tornado for the Imagination Pavilion at Epcot Center. If you want to see some of this stuff for real, we'll do a little magic right now, and here we are in the Special Effects Lab again. And right beside me, you'll see a giant glass jar with some lightning inside it. The way we create this is we use a giant Tesla coil, which produces about 500,000 volts of electricity through a stainless steel electrode at the bottom of the jar. The jar is charged with krypton gas, and we get the effect that you're seeing now. Right next to it, we have one of the smaller jars, or Tesla balls, we call them. And in it, the center of it is a stainless steel ball with a stainless steel rod. And this one is charged with neon gas and a very slight amount of krypton. And we'll take my magic wand so you can see what I'm pointing to. And there is your small Tesla ball charged with neon. Here we have another one we call the bell jar. Here is a machine, a prototype anyway. It's not the actual machine, but it's the prototype, first model of a smellitor, which is a scent cannon. Now, for instance, in the Energy Pavilion, when you see the actual volcano, you'll have one of these pointing across the ride track, which will pump out scent as the people go by, and as soon as they see the actual volcano, they'll actually smell the smell of a volcano.
There is still another kind of magic at EPCOT Center, the kind that makes education and information fun.
You know, for most of my adult life, I worked as an artist at Walt Disney Studios, animator, director, producer, and so forth. And all the time I had an interesting hobby, and that was transportation. I've always been interested on how people got from point A to point B. Because of this interest in transportation and vehicles and airplanes and flying and so forth, I became sort of a nut on transportation. And that's how I got involved with the world of motion. In this ride, the problem was how to show you, the audience, riding in our little cars that move through the attraction, roughly in a simple way, the history of transportation from the caveman down to the present. Well, it's one thing to show what happened in different situations. It's another problem to be entertaining, because I'd worked on many sequences at Disney Studios and involved gags and humor and so forth. I decided that the best approach would be to treat the whole idea of going through these epochs of transportation change, all the way from the point where man worked or walked on his 2 feet to the time he had automobiles and jet planes, treat it as a light subject. In other words, sort of tongue-in-cheek. The whole history of transportation is very complex. It has many pathways that lead out in different directions, and to incorporate this in a 14-minute ride is impossible. So we took big moments in transportation history which would lend themselves to a light touch, a little fun.
As the myriad components fall into place, the finishing touch is added to EPCOT Center. The people who will give it life and will be its ambassadors to the world. Through determined effort, through persistence, through attention to minute detail, and through teamwork.
We have something, I think, it's different, and it's, you know, and timing in life is everything. I think the importance of the project for the guest that comes to Florida is we're trying to present information and knowledge in an entertaining way. And I think the world's ready for that. We have many problems in the world, in our country, in our cities, in our states today, and I think a better informed public will make it easier to solve these problems, and that's just what EPCOT is going to do. It's a remarkable achievement, and it could only be done because we've been 25 years at that kind of work through Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Don't forget the state-of-the-art started with Walt in '55, and progress is involved in it, so 26 years later, you ought to be able to do something a lot better. In 1955, when Walt, you know, we were just in the movie and television and merchandising and publishing business, he put us into the outdoor recreation business with Disneyland in '55, and then that followed with our 1971 Walt Disney World, which broadened the base again, and now we're a $1 billion company. But right now, with this EPCOT idea, it's a sound idea, it's right on. And if the young creative people of our entire organization really believe in that, and we have top management now to help them bring these ideas to pass, I think that the next 10 years can be the most rewarding that the company's ever had. And I think Walt would be real proud, because I always used to say, even before Disneyland in the late 40s, that someday Walt would be better known as an educator of bringing information to people in a meaningful way. And if this all happens, it'd be kind of fun to have a feeling like that come true.
So that's what EPCOT is, an experimental prototype community that will always be in a state of becoming. It will never cease to be a living blueprint of the future, where people actually live a life they can't find anywhere else in the world. Here in Florida, we have something special we never enjoyed at Disneyland, the blessing of size. There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we can possibly imagine. You people here in Florida have one of the key roles to play in making EPCOT come to life. In fact, it's really up to you whether this project gets off the ground at all. It's an exciting challenge, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for everyone who participates. Speaking for myself and the entire Disney organization, we're ready to go right now.